Trudeau has a spending problem, so much so that this could be impacting and destroying Canada for decades. Some experts have come on to BNN Bloomberg and said this is potentially the worst budget they've ever seen. And this gentleman is quite old, so that's saying a lot. He actually used to be the governor of the Bank of Canada, and he has a lot of insights into what is happening with the budget, why this is destructive to Canada, and because he's not a politician anymore, he gets to speak a little bit more freely. He is a little soft-spoken, he does speak a little slow, but what he's saying is important. I think it's good to stick around for. Let's dive into today's video and hear what he has to say. Let's get into it.
Has been outspoken on. David Dodge is the former Bank of Canada governor, and he joins us now. David, good morning. Thanks very much for your time.
Good morning.
All right, you've had a couple days here now to process all of the details from the budget. What's your overall takeaway?
Well, first, it along with the provincial budgets is really not very helpful to the Bank of Canada in terms of dealing with inflation. So that's unfortunate.
That's unfortunate is saying it lightly. I've mentioned in other videos, people don't understand, like, this government spending makes inflation worse. Like, people think, like, because people are struggling now, they think we need money now. But again, like, this is going to make inflation worse. If we keep doing this, it's like a Band-Aid we're going to have to pull off eventually.
The big problem is that most of what the minister did was to concentrate on raising current consumption rather than promoting investment in machinery, equipment, and intellectual property, which is really necessary in order to provide workers with the capital that will allow them to be more productive. And that has been a problem now in Canada for a number of years, and this budget continued to emphasize that particular problem. And I guess,
and you know, we talked about this in the productivity video when I did on that the CBC video. We talked about it. The problem is Canada is not getting the investment that we need because businesses are less likely to take risks when they know that they're potentially going to get punished with increased capital gains tax. When the Canadian dollar is as low as it is, we should be getting more investment. And like, American investors should be piling up because they're getting way more bang for their buck when it comes to being like, wow, I can, 100 USD is getting me 140 CAD. That's amazing. I can do this. But the problem is we're not productive. We just don't have the facilities to help produce this. And then, of course, we don't have a government who's encouraging these investors to come in. If anything, they're discouraging them to come in. So it's like we're double losing.
The last 2 points I would make is I think it was very unfortunate, the capital gains measure, from the point of view of investment in risky new investment in Canada. It simply makes Canada less attractive place for that investment to take place. Certainly less attractive for small startups in this country. Remembering that startups really rely on paying their people with shares, and the capital gains tax simply makes that less attractive.
It's kind of interesting to hear from this gentleman who is potentially 100 years old. I don't know how old he is, but he's even realizing, like, startups will pay in equity, and especially in the software space, it's so common of like, hey, we're going to bring this person on. Maybe we can't give you the money that we thought we were going to give you, but we are able to pay you in shares or equity. And then people are looking at that as like part of their compensation. But now it's like, well, if I'm going to start a software company and my intention is to grow it, make the company as big as I can, sell it off, or like the talent who's going to be interested in that, they're like, well, I don't want to be getting quote unquote punished for being an owner of this. So, and I know like people are going to say like, oh, that's not such a few amount of people. But the point is, these companies that would have grown in Canada and had the investments in Canada, which would have provided more jobs to Canadians, are now going to be built in other areas.
Again, then the final point I would make which I think is really unfortunate. The government said that they were going to try to boost the optimism of 20 and 30-year-olds and their ability to participate in the economy. But in fact, by simply raising the amount of debt outstanding, and I would note that the government of Canada now is going to be borrowing almost $100 billion next year to fund both the online deficit and the off-budget items. It's these young voters
Borrowing 100 billion.
that are going to be saddled with the debt going forward. And so, in a budget that was supposed to be aimed at helping that particular group, in fact, we have a budget which is very unhelpful for them over the medium term.
And, I'm a little bit more calm today. Obviously, in the video that I posted previously, if you guys watched that about the budget, I was pretty heated because getting that information fresh, I was so annoyed based on exactly what he's saying. And I'm actually, happy to see that he's saying this was supposed to be the fairness budget. And what he's done is they've sold out our futures. Like the young people like me, 20, 30 years from now are going to be devastated dealing with what's happening on this spending now. And it's like so crazy to think that, oh, this is our fairness budget. This is what we're doing. We're just going to sell out your future. Don't worry about that. Nobody has to pay that. It's free money, baby. But then, I'm glad, he's saying this. I said it in the other video because it was one of the things that stood out to me is the irony. And he's obviously seeing it as well, is the irony of saying this is fairness budget focused for younger people, participating in the economy. But we're actually kind of ruining your future at the same time. So,
which is definitely a different message than what we were getting from the federal government. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what kind of picture does it paint for the economy longer term, in your opinion?
Well, unfortunate, and this is at the end of a number of years of budgets that have focused on distribution and focused on increasing current consumption to cope with the cost of living, but failing to recognize that cost of living problem comes from the fact that our productivity has been stagnant or falling over that whole period since 2015.
What happened in 2015, after 2015, like you said, since 2015? What happened? Who took charge? When did the policies start to shift? What happened?
It's certainly stagnant in real terms, absolutely falling relative to all of our peers. And
the French, I said it in my video, we're getting smoked by the French.
Canada simply looks like a less attractive place to invest now in 2024 than it did in the middle of the last decade. And I think that is the unfortunate thing, because it's only through investment in innovative investment that, in fact, we're going to raise our standards of living in the future. So this is I would say unhelpful. I wouldn't say totally surprising, but unhelpful in paving a way for a brighter future for the Canadian economy, looking 5 and 10 years down the road.
This is going to crush us. Like, I don't think we could say this enough. This type of spend, just consume economy that Trudeau is fostering through his, constant intervention, his adding taxes. So he's like punishing innovation. He's increasing government deficit and spending, but we're not becoming more productive. We're not producing anything. So they're like, oh, spend, consume, but don't produce. And then all of a sudden our GDP starts to fall. We have one of the worst GDPs, if not the worst GDP, in the G7. With this level of productivity, like how Canada is trending, we need to do a complete overhaul on the way our country is trending. This would be focusing on our natural resources. Obviously, we have to cut down on immigration. Obviously, you know, we got to get our housing under control, so we got to get more of those built because we spend way too much time and energy on that. Speaking of which, I am a real estate agent in Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below if you do want to work with me, or anybody in my network all the way across Canada. But the point is, we spend all of this time and money in the wrong space. So then as a result, really devastating to see, like, especially as a young person who's happy to be Canadian. Like, I'm proud Canadian, you know, and I'm sitting here going like, how do I leave? Like, there's no future for me here. So like, this is, I know people are thinking this all the time, and it's just getting more and more devastating to see with like the young generation. And because I know that even the boomers want to leave too. Comment down below if you're thinking about going somewhere. But that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great rest of your day.